The wall didn't just breach, it evaporated. I mean, usually you see the entry team stack up on the maglock, run the decryption algorithms, maybe deploy a sonic charge if they're feeling spicy. But this was pure kinetic insanity. I was watching the telemetry feed from the observation deck, and the sensors just flatlined for a second. One moment, the simulation chamber is a pristine, high-contrast kill box. The next, there's a debris cloud expanding at 400 meters per second and a human shape flying through it like a projectile. She wasn't using cover. She wasn't using the suppression drones. Specialist Jace was using the momentum of the explosion to slide across the polished floor, firing two kinetic pistols in opposite directions while spinning. And the noise. I can still hear the ringing in my ears. It wasn't the hum of civilized plasma fire. It was the thunder of chemical propellants. But wait, hold on. It didn't start like that. Honestly, it started with a clipboard and a whole lot of condescension. Rewind about 2 hours. We were down at the base of the Ethelgard training spire. The place is sterile, you know? White panels, blue light, everything humming with that expensive sovereign hegemony efficiency. Warden Kalen was there, all 7 feet of him, crossing 2 of his arms and holding a data pad with the other 2. He looked like he was carved out of blue granite in disapproval. He was evaluating the new recruit, Specialist Jace. And Jace, well, she looked like she'd accidentally walked into a cathedral while looking for a dive bar. She was leaning against the pristine bulkhead, checking the slide on a weapon that looked like it belonged in a museum exhibit about the pre-warp era. The spire smelled of ionized air and the kind of arrogance only a human could bring to a gunfight. Kalen was running through the standard introductory module, talking about variable gravity combat and predictive algorithm syncing. Heavy, complicated stuff. And Jace just taps the side of her helmet, looking bored. She actually interrupted him to ask if she could turn off the auto-aim assist because the HUD was cluttering up the view. I thought Kalen was going to have a stroke right there. His upper eyes narrowed, and he signaled the control tower to initiate the live fire assessment immediately. I think he wanted to embarrass her. Teach the primitive a lesson about modern warfare. So the lights drop. The holographic targets flare to life, and the simulation begins. Usually, a recruit takes cover, syncs with the grid, and starts picking targets based on threat priority. Not Jace. She didn't even flinch. She just started walking. And then she started shooting. It was terrifying. In a galaxy of laser-guided precision, she was the blunt force of a well-aimed rock. There was no hesitation, no waiting for the targeting computer to lock on. She was firing from the hip, snapping shots at targets that hadn't even fully materialized yet. It was like she knew where they were going to be before the computer did. I saw Kalen check his data pad, then check it again. She was banking shots off the gravity plates. Who does that? She was using the curvature of the room to accelerate her rounds. Kalen, being the stubborn officer he is, he decided this wasn't enough. He swiped his hand across the console, authorizing Phase 4. That's a lethal simulation. That's squad-level stuff meant for a team of 6 synchronized heavy troopers. The room shifted. Gravity inverted. Obstacles started moving at Mach speeds. I expected her to panic, maybe call for a pause. Instead, I saw a grin inside that visor. She didn't just break the record. She treated the record like a suggestion she hadn't heard correctly. She started sprinting, actually running along the walls as the gravity shifted, turning the chaotic environment into a playground. It wasn't soldiering. It was a dance with physics, and she was leading. And just when the dust settled on the solo run, Kalen threw a curveball. He paired her with Lieutenant Valerius for the final module. Hostage rescue. Now, Hanat, you have to understand Valerius. The guy is a walking, talking flowchart. He's a synth-organic hybrid who processes tactical data in nanoseconds. He doesn't make mistakes. He also doesn't improvise. So the simulation resets. It's a reinforced bunker scenario. One entry point, heavily guarded. Valerius starts hand signaling for a standard stack and breach on the main door. He's running the probabilities, syncing his optics with the door lock, and Jace is nowhere near him. I swear Valerius looked over his shoulder, and his optical shutter just blinked. Jace was 10 feet away, slapping a terrifying amount of shaped charges onto the solid, reinforced wall. The wall that isn't supposed to be an entry point. Valerius tried to signal stop, or maybe that's suicide, but Jace just winked. Then came the boom. That's the explosion I told you about earlier, the one that turned the wall into vapor. Valerius was still processing the structural failure when Jace grabbed him by the collar and shouted, "Go left!" before she launched herself right. And I mean launched. She sprinted into the smoke, yelling something that sounded suspiciously like a war cry from a pre-industrial cavalry charge. The enemy AI didn't know what to do. Their algorithms are built for tactical squads, for cover fire, for logic. They weren't built for a maniac sliding on her knees across the floor, firing dual pistols while screaming. She made herself the target. She was the ball in a game, only she knew the rules too. Every turret, every drone, every hostile eye locked onto her. And that left Valerius, poor, confused Valerius, standing in a perfectly clear lane. He didn't even have to aim. He just walked through the smoke and neutralized the hostiles while they were busy trying to track the blur that was Jace. The hostage-secured light blinked green. Time elapsed. 42 seconds. The previous record was 4 minutes. The simulation ended, and the silence in the observation deck was heavy. It wasn't the silence of respect. It was the silence of a system crashing. Kalen stood there, staring at the holographic replay. He watched Jace bounce off a wall, duck under a plasma bolt, and kick a drone into a hostile's face. He looked down at his datapad. 17 incident reports, 23 protocol violations, and 1 perfect mission score. We didn't just recruit a soldier. We invited a hurricane to live in our barracks. In the debriefing, Kalen didn't yell. He didn't lecture. He just looked at Jace, then at the shattered remains of the simulation room, and then back at Jace. The terrifying realization hit him, and you could see it in his eyes. If the enemy ever fought like her, the hegemony was doomed. But if we had her, well, the manuals were going to need a rewrite. Jace didn't seem to notice the existential crisis she'd caused. She just raised her hand, still covered in carbon scoring, and asked if she could paint a nebula pattern on her barracks door because the standard issue gray was depressing. Kalen signed the recruitment forms with all 4 hands. As he filed the digital report, I caught a glimpse of the addendum at the bottom. It was a recommendation for immediate intake of more human personnel from the frontier colonies. And right below that, a request for hazard pay for the officers.